So quantum leaping has to do with jumping in consciousness level. Now, people might be like, that's a nice idea. There's a lot of talk on the internet about conscious levels and dimensional orders and blah, blah, blah. It all has to do with vibration. That's it. How high something is vibrating. So a different consciousness level simply means a higher rate of vibration. In order to get into a different consciousness level is a big jump in resonance, meaning you need to be vibrating high enough to be able to access that consciousness level. You choose. This is about sovereignty. You choose whether or not you want to raise in your vibration. You have to choose whether or not you want to rise in your resonance. So when you rise in your resonance enough, what happens is you can jump into a different consciousness level, which is really very, very, very salient and appropriate for right now. Because 2025 is a year that has been foretold for like millennia. We're at a time where a 12,000 year cycle have come to an end, and we're moving into a cycle of more of the feminine and also about brilliance. Instead of being an age of darkness, we're in the age of light. There have been these waves of very, very, very high frequencies that are washing through the all that is. This is not just happening on Earth, and it's not just happening for humans. It's for everyone. And they've been coming through more and more rapidly in the past few years. If you choose to move up in your resonance right now, you're being supported also by these waves of frequencies, okay? And this shift in linear time where we're starting to enter a new age where there is more light. And I also just want to say that quantum leap, if you choose to make it, you've chosen that a long time ago. You wanted to awaken. You wanted to. And this is the lifetime that you get to do it.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Sovereign Self Show, where you learn that your body and your energy are not in the way, they are leading the way. And today, our beautiful guest, Karen Cheong, is here to talk all about frequency work and the fundamentals of really what it means to be sovereign, how we can be our best self, quantum timeline jumping. We're all about all of this. But before we dive in, a little bit more about Karen, which we'll dive deeper in just a second. Catalyzing and awakening by releasing blocks at the frequency level. Karen's work helps her clients align and live with the brilliance of the richness of life. She lives in the magical town of San Miguel Allende, Mexico, with her partner and husband, Chris. And he was such a big help, by the way. Shout out to Chris for helping us technology-wise today. And you can find her work at sphericalluminosity.com. Welcome, Karen, to the show.
Thank you for having me, Lauren. I'm so excited to be here.
Oh my goodness, me too. I always know it's going to be an amazing show when the energy is like keeping us from getting the technology to work appropriately. We're, about 30 minutes later, we got at work. We're in Riverside, so we're good to go. Right when I surrendered, right when I was like, Lauren, it's fine. Just use Zoom. Doesn't matter. So I think I was like, that could be just the show in itself. If we just surrender,
it could be.
Everything works out perfectly. But needless to say, I would love to hear, Karen, in your own words, how did you get to do the work that you do today? I love hearing kind of the hero's journey synopsis, if you will, because it's never an end. We're continuously on that beautiful deepening and awakening of that spiral as I see it.
Yes, absolutely. I totally agree with you. Everyone thinks that awakening is an end point, but to me, it's the beginning, right? It's the beginning of the infinite awakening that happens. So it's just as humans, we're struggling to get to the beginning. That's usually what happens with most of us. But to answer your question, I certainly didn't ask to do the work that I'm doing. I didn't intend it. I think a lot of people feel like, or at least that I've encountered, want to have healing abilities or special abilities or whatnot. And I never did. It wasn't sort of like one of those things that I was searching for. I mean, I'm trained as an attorney, for God's sake. So it wasn't like that was high on my, bucket list of things to achieve. What had happened was that, I'd been seeking for over 25 years for something. And I didn't even know what the something was at the beginning. I just knew that I wanted to be more aware of the mystery, more connected to the all that is. And I knew from a health crisis that there was something that governed our physical reality that we couldn't see. And I really was very curious to know what that was. And so let's fast forward 25 years into San Francisco, California, where my husband and I had a real estate little team, and we were helping people buy and sell real estate or their homes in San Francisco. And what I was noticing was that from the outside, my life seemed pretty damn amazing. Okay, so we had a really successful business. We were one of the top producers in our industry in that town. We had a 90% referral-based business. We loved our team and we had a great relationship. We got to travel a lot. We were learning tons in all these different modalities. And yet, despite all of that external looking glory, or from the outside in looking glory, I was experiencing really severe scarcity. So what would happen is I would be spreadsheeting every night how many months we had of cushion left before we had to sell our house and move in with my parents. So despite it looking amazing from the outside, internally, it was not okay. Like I was like, this is not normal behavior. And it's not the type of behavior that indicates that I'm all good inside. Like I'd been on this journey for 25 years. So I'd done inner work. It's not like I'd just been sitting there doing nothing. I had done, the traditional personal development. I'd explored all these different spiritual modalities. I explored energy work, all these different things. And I was implementing them in our business because I'm really curious. So as a person, I'm just like, well, I learned this cool thing. Well, what happens? Does the cool thing work? I don't know. Let's find out, right? So we had what seemed like this really beautiful packaging, but because I was in this space of scarcity, I was in this fear and I knew it. And I knew enough about myself and I'd done enough inner work that I was like, this is really not okay. And I also was noticing simultaneously that even though we'd been implementing all these different things from all these different modalities, there were other agents who didn't care as much about their clients, weren't doing as much, that were being more successful in terms of what they were producing. And I was like, what am I missing? Something's wrong. You know what I mean? I'm not getting something. So I started asking this question to the universe. And you know how that works when you start asking a question to the universe. I started asking the question, what am I missing? What is wrong with this internal polarity that I'm feeling with what looks amazing from the outside? And so one day, as it happens, I'd just come back from a trip to France and I was sitting on my acupuncturist's table and I was just getting up from my session and she happened to say to me, have you ever heard of frequency work? And in that moment, time totally slowed. So it's kind of like that scene in The Matrix, which is really famous, when he goes backwards and the bullets fly past him because it's super slow. Okay, we'll take that down to a very mundane example where I'm in my acupuncturist's office, right? So this is a really mundane woman's experience in a way, but time slowed. So it was almost like I could see every angle of the room as I turned. And as I turned to her in that moment, I said, I don't, but I know that I need to. And so that began my own process of diving into frequency work and releasing what I call distortion patterns for 2 years intensively. Okay, so I didn't have any outcome other than I don't want to feel like this anymore. That was my only outcome. It wasn't like I was trying to have anything. And then because I'm an intense sort of human being, I was just let's just see what else can shift, right? And I ended up going to a workshop, an unrelated workshop in Sedona, meaning unrelated to frequency work. And it was supposed to be all about piercing the veil. No, it was called Piercing into the Absolute or something like this. And I had no idea what that meant. I'd never heard of this teacher. I just knew I had to go. And it was a 12-day retreat. And as a business owner, I don't know how many of you guys have your own businesses, but to take 12 days off of your business and just let it go is kind of a big deal because you got to delegate and, you just check out for 12 days. It's a long time. So anyway, I knew I had to go because as it approached, my resistance was really, how our technology went nuts? Well, my mind was going a bit bananas, right? It was work's getting really busy. You don't know this teacher. You don't even understand the topic. This is kind of expensive, whatever. And I'm like, okay, I not enough internal work to know that when resistance is up like that, it means a big change is about to happen. So off I went to Sedona. And when I went to that retreat, oddly, the field felt unstable to me. There's a lot of ego mind chatter about trying to prove how awakened they were. And I was like, this is really weird. I don't feel like I should be here. And the weird thing is as a person of Chinese descent, I don't throw down thousands of dollars to go to retreat, clear my schedule for 12 days, and don't sit in the retreat, take notes, and then implement all the stuff. That's just not within my cultural dynamic at all, okay? Or wasn't at the time. And so I made this radical decision to be okay, I'm just not going to come back. I don't know why I'm here, but I shouldn't be here at this retreat. So I decided, well, it's kind of weird. I don't usually have 12 days just to meditate. Let's use the 12 days. So I sat there the next morning and I decided, okay, I don't know what possessed me, Lauren. I was just in the sense of why I thought this was even possible. I was just well, let's see if I can do what he says that we can do. by myself. Let's just try that. And so that morning, I moved my resonance up. I don't know how I thought I could do it. I just did it. And like I said, I entered in the morning. And in that meditation, what happened was I raised my resonance enough that I pierced what I call the veil of forgetting and then merged into the oneness. So all my identity as Karen went away. And just so I know, I just said that very casually as if it was easy. It wasn't, right? Okay. So like I got to a certain point and I literally felt my head bumping up against the ceiling because I was afraid. I was just like, what happens if I lose Karen? Like, holy crap. Am I going to go insane? Am I going to lose all my relationships? What's going to happen to me? Like I could be like, I don't know what's going to happen here. So I had to like surrender just like you did. This is my version of surrender. I was just like, I have to surrender. It was very hard. I cried. As a control freak, this was like really difficult for me, you know? And so finally, though, when I surrendered, all of a sudden I felt this upward rush in momentum. And then I felt this huge expansion that I'd never felt before. And then I emerged into the one. And in that moment, there was no Karen, right? It didn't exist. That identity as me didn't exist. And I started laughing because I couldn't believe that I'd forgotten that I was part of the one. It's like, how do you forget that you have a hand? Like it's right there, you know? And I laughed in my body. Like I just started laughing and laughing because I couldn't believe that I'd forgotten. And then I started to cry because I couldn't believe that I'd forgotten. And anyway, I have this whole experience where I realized that everything is frequencies, everything, and that I can change things at that level. And I was like, and then not thinking this, I just realized it. And at some point, I come back from this meditation and it's dark. And I'm like, that's really weird. Because I started the meditation in the morning and I looked at the clock and it had been 9 hours. And I was like, whoa. And it was unbelievable. And then the following days, I'm in Sedona. So I'm out hiking because it's beautiful, Sedona, right? So I'm hiking and literally I perceive the illusion. I'm like, it's like that scene again in The Matrix was just like weirdly accurate. It's like I could put my hand through the illusion. I was like, whoa. And I realized the illusion isn't here to punish us. It's actually here for us to grow from us to transcend it, for us to move into a higher resonance and realize who we truly are as co-creators. We created the illusion to help us to ascend. That is what we created it for. And we've just forgotten in the density of the illusion. And it's funny because I had a friend who I hadn't seen for a number of years, and she happened to stop by. And we overlapped in Sedona for literally 12 hours. So she stopped by. She came to see me. She's talking. We're connecting like one does with a friend you haven't seen for a long time. And as she's talking, I'm like, that's really weird. I can see all her distortion patterns. And so I say to her, and it just like literally busted out of me. I'm like, do you want help with this problem that you seem to be having? And she kind of looked at me and she was like, sure. So I cleared her stuff. She left, didn't hear from her. All of a sudden, 3 days later, my phone starts blowing up with texts from her friends being like, hey, your friend just told me about this thing that you do. Can you help me? And I was like, sure, I guess. I don't know. I guess so. And that's how it began. So I didn't ask for it, Lauren. I know that was like a way longer story than probably you're asking for, but
so juicy. Thank you for that. I selfishly love I'm here for the ride of the journey and the story. And I think that, I mean, that's why so many listeners too, is like we can relate to the part, last night, of course, I was kind of reflecting on my own journey and how it is a spiral. I've been searching, since my early 20s. I'm in my mid 30s now. Like I had a quarter life crisis. Like I was like, there's got to be more to life than this. But then, there's another dark night of the soul, which led me deeper. And, which it's helping us remember we're on this beautiful path. And through physical illness, so many of the people listening, same thing, is through these dark nights, physically, relationship-wise, financially.
Yep.
It gets us to go back. It's up the gateway. It's the portal to that remembrance, to
absolutely
connecting to all that is. So thank you for sharing that beautiful story with us.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
So now I want to know more about the distortion fields and the work that you do now. Like now I'm like, ooh, okay, let's dive in there. Obviously there's the distortion fields. And then what's the basis of the frequency work that you do now as well?
Sure. Yeah. So as you guys all know, because you're listening to this podcast, everything is vibrating. right? So the rate of vibration is what determines the form. So if you take something really physical like water, when the molecules vibrate really fast, it's steam. Yep. And then when the molecule vibration slows down, it becomes liquid water. And when the molecular vibration slows down even more, it becomes ice or density or form. So if you take that same idea and extrapolate it all the way out to the field, to oneness, to consciousness, that is vibrating at an extraordinarily high rate. So whatever you call that consciousness from which everything comes and to which everything returns, that we can't even measure with our instruments. So in order for the oneness to have something other than the one, there needs to be a drop in vibration. So even for it to recognize itself as like, oh, there's the oneness, that has to happen. When that drop happens in vibration, frequencies are formed. And when that vibrational level slows down even more, what we call energy is created. And when that slows down even more, that's when thoughts, emotions, or the physical form, density, like your chair or whatever, your body, is formed. So everything is a reflection of those frequencies. And the thing about frequency work is that everyone believes or has this belief that I have to do something on the physical and then I'll change things on the spirit level. But that's not true. The higher order of vibration always dictates form, always. It's just the way things are. So frequency work is awesome because finally, we are at the point of consciousness where it is possible, where people like me can work at that level of frequency, right? It's right at the level of the field. And so when you can release distortion at that level, then the physical can reorganize around it. So what is a distortion then? So a distortion to me is anything that really keeps you from merging back into that oneness. And I know in our language, distortion is like negative, but it's not necessarily negative. Like your body is a distortion, right? It's a density that keeps you from merging back with the one. It's not necessarily bad. It's just a distortion. Okay, so a distortion happens when you come into embodiment. So from my perception, we are all spheres of pure source energy that are vibrating at a very unique rate. So that unique rate of vibration is what individuates us. It makes you, you, and me. So when you drop into form, you must drop in vibration, obviously, because here you are as infinite indestructible consciousness. And then to have embodiment, which by the way, I know sucks sometimes, but it's this tremendous gift because you have to remember that 99.99999999999% of everything is quote unquote nothing. It's not nothing, it's just not form. And then 0.0000001% of everything is form. So you get to experience density, form, right? Which is kind of incredible because if you think about it, if you're infinite indestructible consciousness, do you have fear? No. Do you have worry? No. Do you get to feel sensuality? No. Do you get to feel the pleasure of eating something really delicious or the intensity of joy or the intensity of anger or all those things that are all very much part of the embodiment? No, you don't get to feel that when you're having infinite indestructible consciousness, and you don't get the same learning curve. Right? Because honestly, when you're in form, we're kind of like really asleep until we start to wake up. Like we really believe like this is the game, right? This thing, right? So the thing is, when you drop into form, what looks like layers and 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 layers of duct tape form around the sphere. Now, a lot of people will ask me this kind of odd question, but it's a question that comes up a lot. Like, am I somehow irrevocably damaged in my soul? I'm like, no, you're not irrevocably damaged. You just got all this crap around you. So the distortion patterns, which are the layers of duct tape, are really heavy. Okay, so it causes the sphere's vibration to slow down. I mean, you've ever like picked up a ball of duct tape, it's hot, it's heavy, right? So if you imagine that all around you, it causes your vibration level to slow down, and it causes you to believe that there's not this infinite field of pure source energy everywhere all around you. You just don't see it. All you see is the duct tape. So the layers of duct tape or distortion patterns come from very specific things, okay? A lot of them, or like the short list of what most of it is, are your lineage patterns. Okay, so what your ancestors experienced very much influence you. So, this is the field of epigenetics, right? Dr. Bruce Lipton talks about this all the time. So, what they're discovering now in quote unquote science is that your ancestors' experience, even if you didn't know your 100th great grandma removed from you, absolutely affects the field that is you and how you not only express in terms of genetically, but also what your options are and what you think is possible for you. There's also religious distortion patterns. Even if you were brought up agnostic, weren't brought up in a religious household at all, your ancestors were absolutely influenced by religion, so you are. Your cultural patterns and also your past lives. So those are the things that influence most the distortion patterns that happen for most people. There's other things as well, but that's like the chunk of it. So the wonderful thing is that because now consciousness has risen enough and we can release the distortion pattern at the level of the field, the thing is that most people forget, and that happens a lot in the spiritual world, is that you have free will. You are sovereign, which brings us right back to this. Now, free will is a pain in the ass because sometimes we don't use it very well, right? Like sometimes we make brilliant decisions, and other times we're like, wow, that was just dumb. Like, what is going on with me, right? It happens. So the thing is, because you are sovereign as a being and because you have free will, it's not like, Karen, like sprinkles some magic dust over you, like says some kind of blessing and blah, 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 and then you're free. That's not how it works. You have free will. It's your journey. It's your sovereignty. So the thing is, as much as I can help by releasing that distortion pattern at the level of the field, you must participate because there's a process that I call confirming the removal, which is using your authority, your sovereignty to be like, those patterns no longer exist for me because I am co-creating my reality. So yes, I give you, meaning Karen gives you, a tremendous catalyst, but it's up to you to capitalize on it and use that momentum. So I love that we're talking about sovereignty because a lot of people fall down on that. They want to be healed. They want to be saved by someone else. I'm like, no one else can do that for you. I hate to tell you, but this is your journey. You get to, which is awesome because it's yours. So yeah, that's how it works.
Well, thank you for pointing that out. I hear Abraham or Esther Hicks quote, "You're so free, you choose bondage."
Yes.
It's like we don't realize that. And, that was so much of my journey at the beginning was like, I was into all of this stuff, past lives and manifestation. But I was like, somebody tell me what's wrong with me. Somebody fix, the sovereignty part didn't click at first. And, obviously the evolution led me to the podcast many moons ago. But I think my journey, and I think so many people, the listeners, as we go on a healing journey, we want to give back. We feel that purpose, we feel that alignment, and then we're like, come up against those distortion patterns and start that circle over again. And remembering how powerful we are, and remembering that we can do this work on ourselves. For a long time, I was on the other side of the spectrum. I'm like, I'm not getting any energy healing, no past life something. I'm like, it's on me. And now I'm like, Lauren, there's a balance, right? There's a balance. The pendulum swung one way and then the other way. And a lot of people listening, we always want to know, the quantum leap, the timeline jumping. You kind of mentioned this, and I've experienced this too. When I manifested my partner right before, well, first of all, my body received a diagnosis about 4 or 5 years ago. I was already on this journey of precancerous cells. And I was like, okay, well, I got to take responsibility. It's something, energetically. I'm like, it makes sense emotionally and how I've been kind of living right now. Time to take a focus. Deep dove into breath work and really working with my own Kundalini life force energy. Through that experience, awakened my own clairsentience, kind of similar to your story. It's like, okay, through this thing that I didn't think was good, it woken all this up. But before I went to this retreat, 2 weeks leading up, I'd never been so anxious. I was like on the verge of, oh my God, what should I be? I'm not going to go to this retreat. What's happening? Long story short, I end up manifesting my partner, and that was what my resistance to this literal timeline shift was like. That ego, that current reality was like, nope. Resistance. I was like, there's something here. I don't know what. But yeah, I would love to hear. Let's dive deep into that, from the lens of sovereignty, from the lens of looking at the frequency distortion in those patterns.
Yeah.
I would love, you kind of mentioned a little bit, but what's your perspective on, timeline jumping and quantum leaping?
Sure. So to me, those two things are distinct. So timeline jumping has to do with linear time. So I'll talk about that. And then quantum leaping has to do with leaping in consciousness level. Okay, those two things are different to me. So timeline jumping is and now you've done timeline jumping, all of you, whether or not you're aware of it. Okay, because there are these moments where you either say yes or no, and then your experience changes. So in the field, there are infinite number of timelines, infinite. All right. And what dictates what timeline you get to experience has to do with your resonance level or your vibrational level. Okay. And that's what frequency work is all about. It's about releasing your distortion patterns so your frequency resonance rises. When your frequency resonance rises, you start to be able to access higher and higher levels of timelines. That's what the awakened state is. That's what it all has to do with vibration. Thinks that it has to be really fancy. It's not. Honestly, it doesn't have to do with deserving or anything. It just has to do with, are you vibrating high enough, period. Right? So whether you do it by releasing your own distortion through inner work and breath work and whatever the thing is, or you do it through frequency work, honestly, there are many paths that lead to the same thing. And it's very simple. Like I said, is your resonance high enough? That's it. So the thing is, the reason that a lot of people, when they get stuck, experience similar things over and over is because their resonance is too low. So the timelines that are available to you are similar and they're more dense. It's kind of like your resonance is like this little keyhole. And the higher and higher your resonance is, the bigger the keyhole gets. And now all of a sudden, more possibility becomes available to you. Right? So a timeline is a trajectory through linear time, and it is a very specific experience. So, for example, the you who didn't go to that retreat, Lauren, exists. Like, there she is in her timeline doing whatever she's doing, right? So she's doing her thing, but the you that you chose is like, I'm going to go. It's a different timeline. You know what I mean? It's like this fork in the road where you're like, okay, I'm going to choose a different trajectory. And now my life looks totally different than if I hadn't said yes to the retreat. Like if I had succumbed to the resistance, if I had succumbed to the fear, if I had succumbed to the worry. So we all have moments like this in our lives where we're like, wow, if I'd been 2 minutes later, I would have missed it. If I had said yes instead of no, or if I had said no instead of yes, everything in my life would look different. So here's the thing. Everyone thinks of it like a movie. Like, if I choose a different trajectory, in this trajectory, then like the mother's dead, you know what I mean? And then, whatever. But remember, there are infinite timelines. So it's not like that stark. I know they do that for the movie purpose, but it's more like you have all these infinite timelines. So things vary, right? Depending on your resonance. So it could be that in this current trajectory, let's just say, I don't know, your mom is really critical and harsh, right? But then you choose a different timeline because something has happened where your resonance bumps and now all of a sudden you're in a different timeline. And instead of being like harsh and critical, she's more accepting. Okay, still critical sometimes, but more accepting. But she's a different version. Does that make sense? So what happens in your life, what it looks like, what you get to experience, the people who come in, the collaboration changes depending on the resonance of the timeline. Okay, so how do you timeline jump? Well, most of us don't do it intentionally, right? You don't, because we just think, oh, okay, well, I was at a crossroads and I made a choice. Yes, absolutely. But what happens is, as your frequency resonance rises, part of sovereignty has to do, for me anyway, has to do with recognizing your authority as co-creator. You are co-creating your experience in every single second, whether you're doing it intentionally or you're doing it unintentionally. The thing is, as your resonance rises, you become more and more aware of what it is that you are co-creating. You step more into your sovereignty as co-creator. So as a result, you can more intentionally enter higher level timelines because they're available to you. Now, will you know exactly what is happening in any of the timelines? No, right? It's not about certainty, right? I just want to unlock those two things, because a lot of people think, oh, when I have awakening or if I have more authority as a co-creator, then everything will be clear to me. Clarity of the mind like that is simply certainty of the mind. It wants to be safe. It wants to know what all the outcomes are. But as we talked about through this whole thing, Lauren, right? It's all about surrender. You don't know what the hell's going to happen in the timeline. It just feels like it's a higher resonance and you're just going to wait to see how it unfolds. But you know that the resonance of this timeline is better and you can see it in the reality, right? Like what you're inspired by, who comes in, like what, who you get to, who you get to be with even, like how you express yourself, what your relationships look like. All that stuff is different. So when you start to rise in your resonance, all of these better timelines show up. And I'll just give you a little example, which I think is fun because it happens all the time for the people who do frequency work. And I find it astounding. So I have this client who's in her 70s. So if you all think you're too old to do this, it has nothing to do with age. Okay. So I have the client, she's probably like 76 at this point now. And she had been married for over 50 years to the same man. And she is, she's in her 70s. So at the time, culturally, women wouldn't go into the workforce. So the men would go into the workforce and she would stay at home and raise the kids and take care of the house. That was her job. All right. So her husband had always been very, very like assertive and demanding, and it was always his way is the right way. So even if she wanted to have spending money for the kids, she had to ask him. If she wanted spending money for her, she had to ask him. And she found it really demeaning, but that's just the way culturally at the time it was. Okay, so fast forward. So now she's in her 70s. She's doing more and more frequency work. She didn't really come in for anything other than she felt like she was like overwhelmed with feeling too much. And she wanted to start to feel herself more. She was looking for herself at age 70, whatever it was, which is kind of a remarkable thing. So anyhow, as she's clearing her distortion patterns, she realized, wait a minute, I'm really being controlled here and I don't like it. Like everything in my life is being controlled by this person. I don't like the way it feels. So she's starting to feel her own sovereignty, right? She's starting to feel her resonance speed up because we're peeling away these layers of duct tape. And as a result, the sphere that's her is starting to vibrate faster and faster. And she's like, I want to vibrate faster. It feels better to me. So she realizes that she's been under this kind of control and she's like, okay, that's it. I want a divorce. I've decided I can't change him. It's okay. I don't need to change him, but I can't be with him anymore. But in order to be in the space where I'm not with him, we need to sell the house because I don't have any financial means myself. He's always controlled the money. I don't have any control and any access to any money without him. So she's like, okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to sell the house and then I get half, right? Because they're in a community property state. All right. So he resists and she's like, oh. So she's like, look, the housing market's about to tank. I'm telling you to trust my intuition. The housing market's really high. It's about to drop. Just trust me. I think this is a really good time to sell. He resists. She does more frequency work. She releases more of her distortion patterns. And then he has a conversation. He comes in randomly one morning at breakfast to pick up his coffee. And he says, you're right. We should sell the house now. She's like, okay, all right. They decide to sell the house, but she's like, we have to fix it up. Like, it's not going to sell like this, right? He resists again. She's like, oh God. So I'm going to clear more of my distortion patterns, right? Because I can't make him change. It's all about me. So clears more of her distortion patterns. And begrudgingly, at some point, she starts painting herself. He's like, okay, fine, I'll help you. So they paint, do the garden, blah, blah, blah. Put the house on the market. The market does soften. She's right. The market softens. And she's like, oh no. Market softens. And he's holding out at a certain price. She's like, look, I'm telling you, we need to lower our price a little bit because our house isn't as good as all these other ones. He resists once again. Have you noticed a trend? She releases some more of her distortion patterns. They finally sell the house. She's delighted because they own it outright. So now they've closed escrow and she has all of her ducks in a row. She has the divorce attorney paperwork. She has all of it ready. And she goes to have lunch with him. And she's ready to tell him, I want a divorce and I want half the proceeds of this house. Before she can open her mouth, he says to her, I've been thinking about it. I really feel like you should be the one to manage the proceeds of the sale. What in God's name just happened? Okay? What just happened? She has released enough of her distortion patterns. She's been shifting timelines, different timeline, different timeline, different timeline, different timeline. In each of those timelines, is her husband the same? No, he's a different human. So in this timeline, he says to her, okay, I want you to manage it. So what do? They bought a sailboat. They didn't get divorced and they're sailing around the world. That's what they're doing. All right.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Wow. Yeah. I think, I've had experiences with that with my sister, I always felt like I wanted this baby sister since like this little, those are my first memories. She was my biggest teacher growing up. Opposite personalities. We triggered each other. And same thing. I didn't even focus on her. I kept just working on my own frequency. And now she's got divination rods. We do pull tarot together. Where she's reading my astrological chart. Like she knows it more. I'm like, wow, so everybody listening, I'm sure can relate. And it isn't about the other person, right? And I want to underline that before we keep going because it's internally. And when you're in an awakened, beautiful, conscious relationship, I've run into this. And when your partner says, it's not about me, this is your frequency thing.
Yep.
And that's for me, that's been a beautiful, beautiful challenge to deepen that for both of us, because we both have to own it, right? It's not just one or the other. It's we both. Yeah. So Thank you. I wanted to underline that a little bit there
Yeah.
before we moved
Yeah.
on.
Because I just want to say, when she came to me with about the house thing I wanted divorce, she's like,
Yeah.
can you change this for him? I'm like, no,
Yes.
no, we're going to change it for you because you're creating this. It's not him. Everybody wants to fix the other person. It's funny. I have fewer one-on-one sessions than I do group sessions, but I had this one-on-one session with this woman who came on. She's a mother. She's like, here's a laundry list of all the things that are wrong with my daughter. Clear them. And I was like, that's not how this works. I hate to tell you that, but let's release some control patterns here.
Yep.
For
love
you.
it.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, it's fun. Yeah.
So if we could just, I know we're kind of towards the end of the show, but real quickly, quantum leaping. What
Yeah.
what the difference? We obviously went through timeline jumping.
Yeah.
I would love to just kind of maybe wrap everything up with this
Quantum
quantum.
leaping? Yeah, I love quantum leaping. So quantum leaping has to do with jumping in consciousness level. Now, people might be like, that's a nice idea. There's a lot of talk on the internet about conscious levels and dimensional orders and blah, blah, blah. Okay, let me just make it really simple for you. It all has to do with vibration. That's it. Okay, everything has to do with vibration, how high something is vibrating. So a different consciousness level simply means a higher rate of vibration. Now, in order to get into a different consciousness level is a big jump in resonance, meaning you need to be vibrating high enough to be able to access that consciousness level. Is that consciousness level locked to you? Is it only for like the chosen ones? No. Okay, a lot of people are like, I don't even know where this chosen one rhetoric came from. It's ridiculous. You choose. This is about sovereignty. You choose whether or not you want to raise in your vibration. Not everyone will. It's okay. That's their journey, right? Like, I know that everyone wants to like save everyone else, but honest to God, you can't control them. I hate to tell you, right? You have to choose whether or not you want to rise in your resonance. So when you rise in your resonance enough, what happens is you can jump into a different consciousness level, which is really very, very, very salient and appropriate for right now. Why? Because 2025 is a year that has been foretold for like millennia by different native prophecies. We're at a time where a 12,000 year cycle, actually two different ones, have come to an end, and we're moving into a cycle of more of the feminine. I'm not denigrating the masculine, okay, people? I am not bashing the masculine. I did not say that, but it becomes more about the feminine and also about brilliance. Instead of being an age of darkness, we're in the age of light. And so we are at a point in time where for the past couple of decades, there have been these waves of very, very, very high frequencies that are washing through the all that is. This is not just happening on Earth, and it's not just happening for humans. It's for everyone. And they've been coming through more and more rapidly in the past few years. That's why people like your sister, who were not interested in none of this, are all of a sudden like, what's this like thing that you're doing? It's kind of amazing, And people, have you noticed people are waking up? Like, look, 20 years ago, acupuncture was like, whoa, oh my God, what is acupuncture? So exotic. What is yoga? You know what I mean? Now, like, everyone does yoga at acupuncture. I mean, you know what I mean? It's like normal. It wasn't that way like 20, 25 years ago. Honestly, it really wasn't. So things, even though it seems like it's all going to hell in a handbasket, things have gotten higher in terms of resonance. So because we have this time where we have this support, which is all these highly vibrating waves of frequencies that are moving through the all that is. If you choose to move up in your resonance right now, you're being supported also by these waves of frequencies. Okay. And this shift in linear time where we're starting to enter a new age where there is more light. And can I just, before we go into woo woo land, I don't mean like light. I mean, literally, the vibration of light is higher than form. Okay. So the vibrational level of light, okay, in terms of the spectrum of light, you have more access to it, which means that you, as a being, which is in part light, gets to vibrate higher. So when you start to move into a higher consciousness level, let's just also bottom line why you care. Everything changes because at this current resonance of consciousness, I don't know if people have noticed this, there's a lot of like heaviness here, right? There's oppression and subjugation, and there's a lot of fear, and there's lots of scarcity, and there's like, I'm not powerful enough. All that stuff exists at a certain level of consciousness. It just does. When you move into a higher level of consciousness, that's vibrating much higher. So this lower level vibration cannot exist. It literally cannot exist. It's like two ships in the night. Like, They don't exist on the same level. They can't. Different levels of vibration. All right. When you move into this higher level of consciousness, what happens? You start to recognize your sovereignty, that you truly are co-creating everything and that you really are intrinsically part of the one. Now, why does that matter? It matters because what I do to you, what I say to you, what I do to the earth, what I do to the water, what I do to anything has a very direct impact to me because I'm aware of it. So do you think that what choices we make would be the same if you were more viscerally aware that you were part of everything? Of course it would change. How we would govern ourselves would change. How our healthcare would look. Everything would change. How our corporations are, like everything would change, right? So that's the thing. It's not about everything here sucks. I'm trying to get away with it. Get away from it. It's like, okay, where's that running within me? What do I need to clarify so that I can move in vibration up to this level of consciousness, which is different? And I also just want to say that quantum leap, if you choose to make it, you've chosen that a long time ago. You wanted to awaken. You wanted to, and this is the lifetime that you get to do it. Now, please know, not everyone chooses. Many people choose not to make that jump. It's okay. Okay, I know it's hard because we love the people we love, right? We really want our moms, our kids, our puppies to come with us, right? Like we want everyone to come with us because we love them. And I get it. But just like you're sovereign, so too are they. And they have to choose whether or not they want to ascend at this time. So that's what a quantum leap is. And the quantum leap has to also do with accessing that quantum vibration. It's not about the embodiment. It's about that level that everything on spirit level exists on. This is where you start to be in the eternal now more, which is what everything on spirit level is functioning at, really. It's where everything is happening all at once in the ever-present, infinite, eternal now that we can't even possibly fathom with our minds. We can't even like imagine past like a billion. It's hard for us as humans, but it's like infinite. So when you get to the quantum level of resonance, then first of all those timelines start to open to you because you're resonating a lot higher. You start to be able to move in terms of consciousness level. Your body, okay, I just want to talk about the body because there's this like weird tradition that happens where it's like not about the body. The body's bad, it's dense, it's sinful, it's where all these terrible things happen. I'm not saying terrible things don't happen in your body, but here's the thing. You're supposed to bring this with you, right? Like if you're going to ascend in the body, you got to do it in your body. All right. I hate to tell you this. So anyway, so that is what quantum leaping is. We're finally at a point in consciousness where not only can we reach the quantum vibration, your body can start to vibrate high enough to be not only be able to sustain it, but to be able to maintain it, which is a really important thing.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And that's so much of my journey. And I know what I chose to sign up for this lifetime was like the body's and leading your way. It's not in the way, it was the
Yep.
beginning of my journey. And then it
Yep.
was like, wow. And now like for me recently, I've done the deep meditation, the quantum heal, all the things, but now it's like crave embodiment work to get to that level instead of sitting and doing meditation. Like last night, I was like, oh, I could do a meditation, but I'm like, I don't feel like really going outside. I just laid on my acupuncture mat. We talked about
Uh-huh.
that earlier.
Yeah.
And and my body went so deep, so
Yeah.
easily. And all these pieces were coming together. Of course, it was about the void and the quantum womb and like that feminine energy sovereignty. I'm really connected to Isis and the rose lineage. All that stuff was just coming in at me. And I do think, people listening, I think we're beginning to resonate more with the body. People are craving, I am,
Yeah.
more. How can we bring the body with us on those experiences and
Absolutely.
the frequency shifts?
Yeah. And so the thing is, here's the thing. A lot of us were told in not just lifetime, but many lifetimes, in order to access the divine, you have to leave the body.
Yeah.
But actually, what happens is it disempowers you. The key is to find the infinite within. So, meaning to go all the way into what I call the 0 point of space and time, which is right in the center of your solar plexus, and dive infinitely in. Because when your resonance is high enough, you'll recognize that infinitely in is the same as infinitely out. But when you go through the body, it's so much more stable. And as a result, your brilliance in your embodiment gets bigger and brighter, and the impact you have in your embodiment gets bigger and brighter. Because, like, you can have all that as infinite indestructible consciousness. The key is to have it in your body, as you said. And it's so interesting that you mentioned the Rose Line and Isis, because we happen to be doing a journey to Egypt this fall, right? Which is all about unlocking our ancient celestial wisdom. And last year we did rediscovering the Mary Magdalene resonance and unlocking the Christ consciousness, which was in Scotland. So it's kind of funny how the feminine, like we just talked about this year, this transition is coming in this way that's really, really powerful. And I think the thing is, part of the sovereignty that I'm noticing really in this year is about releasing subjugation or the belief that we are not enough, that we're not powerful enough, that I'm just going to go a little bit more into left field because we're already there, but like, let's go a little bit more. So, I've known for about 15 years now, and I didn't know why I knew this. Oftentimes I know things I don't know why, right? Like, they don't have context and I don't really care. And I'm just like, okay, I know that. And I have no idea what the hell that means. But anyway, I knew 15 years ago that something had happened to our DNA, and I didn't know what that meant. But I knew there was a corruption at the DNA level that was preventing us from really accessing more of the limitless. Like, intellectually, we know that there's the limitless. Everyone talks about the limitless on social media, right? And all that sort of stuff. And you're like, okay, yeah, except my life feels kind of limited. Why do our lives feel limited, even though we can have all of this expansion and meditation? Like, why in our physical lives do we hit like limited a lot? You know what I mean? So part of it is to release your distortion patterns so that you can experience more of what I call the big S self, even with your eyes open, living in your embodiment. That's a huge part of it. And there's this corruption in the DNA. So what happened was, backing up. So everything on spirit level, even if you look at sacred geometry, is a base of 12, meaning divisible by 12. It's not a base 10. Humans insist on 10. I don't know why we insist on 10, but we really do. That's why pi is this really stupid number. It's like 3.14 blah, 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 infinitely. It's because we keep trying to divide it by 10. Honestly, just divide it by 12. You know what I mean? And then it would be 4. But anyhow, so everything on the higher level is divisible by 12. So if you look at a lot of sacred geometry, it's like 3s and 4s and 12s and 6s, like all that stuff, right? I'm not really big into sacred geometry, but if you are, you'll know what I'm talking about. Okay, our chromosomes right now, originally there were 24, which is what? A base 12. So if you want to access the divine, you must be at a base 12 in your body. But there was a corruption that happened where our chromosomes 2 and 7 were fused. So all of a sudden, we have 23, not 24. It's not base 12 anymore. So that means that we have a very human experience, very dense, very limited. So now finally in 2025, my feeling is, and let's see what happens, we're finally at a time where we're about to release the subjugation patterns and shift our chromosomes, okay? Like literally shift our DNA. It is bloody time that it's to do this, where we suddenly go to 24. Now, when you go base 12, what happens? It means that in your body, in every cell of your body, is access to the divine because you're base 12 in your chromosomes, in your DNA. So that's the thing, right? Like, how do you have this experience that we've heard of before of consciousness having an embodied experience? Like you see it on bumper stickers, right? Like consciousness having embodied experience. You're like, what the hell does that mean? Right? So, but that's what I mean. You start to actually be aware of yourself being conscious enough, having an embodied experience. And so can I just also please highlight, I do not mean perfect. A lot of people are like, well, then my life will be perfect. No, 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 no. It's not about perfection, right? It's that you are aware of yourself at this much greater level. The imperfection is the challenge that causes you to grow and to expand and to realize even more profoundly how much you are consciousness and how beautiful the human experience is, even when it freaking sucks. Okay? Because you can have the experience of suck and also have an awareness that like this is kind of glorious at the same time. I don't need to be here forever, but it's kind of magnificent too. So anyway, that is what we're moving towards.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I know another Abraham quote is, I know Esther practices a lot. She talks about, I created that. Oh, look, I created that. I create,
Yeah.
even this, oh, I created that.
Yeah.
Yeah. For the DNA thing for me, the knowingness too is, so are you talking about, is it similar what you're saying, like that carbon-based DNA? A lot of people talk about moving to more crystalline DNA. I've heard from a vibrational point, that seems very similar to what you're saying, right? Everybody might have a little bit different perspective
Yeah.
on actually how articulating that.
Yeah. Totally. And I would say a lot of people describe it in different ways.
Yeah.
And what I've perceived is when we go 24, a crystalline structure actually does appear. It's etheric, right? It's not like, I don't know, you have these crystals in your body all of a sudden, but you have this crystalline structure appears, right, within your body, which is mirrored in your light body, which, by the way, is not active unless your resonance is high enough and you activate it. But anyway, it becomes this crystalline structure within your body, which is important. So why does crystalline even matter? Like, who cares? Crystalline matters because of the light. So remember we talked about light and how it has all these different, it's a spectrum, right? It's not like one thing. But the light frequency that happens within a crystalline structure is clearer and higher, and also can be maintained more accurately in your, like, more, not accurately, with more integrity in your physicalness. Okay, so that's why you care about crystalline, even though it sounds cool. The reason you care, honestly, has to do with light and has to do with vibration. I hate to make it reductionist, but it kind of is. It has to do with vibration. So can your physical body maintain a certain level of frequency resonance or vibration? That's why it matters, right? Because all of it has to do with, can your physical body in all of its density maintain a certain amount of light frequency? That's why the 24 matters. And when that happens, that crystalline light structure, I know I'm like way off in left field here, but when that crystalline light structure ignites within the DNA, your light body, which is around your spirit body, so your spirit body to me is a structure that is a sphere that projects the physicalness that is you right in the center of it. You need something to create density, and that's the structure that creates density or form, right? You need something, because here you are as infinite indestructible consciousness, and here you are as embodiment. There needs to be like some intermediary structure. So anyway, around your spirit body, there is the light body, which is not ignited unless your resonance is high enough and unless you ignite it. But what happens is when the crystalline structure within the cells happen, because of the DNA, it reflects your light body. Now, you might ask yourself, okay, that sounds kind of cool, but what do I care? You care because your light body allows you to access you, the versions of you, at higher dimensional orders, but you start to be able to mirror it in your physical body. Make sense? So it means you have more knowingness. It means you have more clarity. It means you have more intuitiveness. You know random things. Like, for example, one of my clients, she was standing in her kitchen, I don't know, making dinner, chop, chop, chop. And she's like, something just happened with Karen. I don't know what it is. Or something just happened in the field. I don't know what it is. I just felt the field just change right now, and I don't know what happened. I don't need to know. I'm going to continue making dinner. But things like this, right? Like you start to be more aware of things like this, right? So all that stuff starts to happen in a way that is really different and it's not necessarily linear. And part of frequency work is to have you become internally strong enough in your center, in your body, so you can maintain these very high levels of frequencies, right? Like a lot of you who are listening have achieved awakening, but what happened was you had to ping out of your body in order to do that, which meant you died, and then you had to reincarnate and do it all again. So the point in this lifetime is not to do that. Right? I mean, you can do it if you really want to, but it's a little bit more inefficient.
Oh, my goodness. Well, thank you so much, Karen. Well, it's 2:22 on my end, so here,
Okay.
we might as well. It's a beautiful angel number alignment
Yes.
for us. I could talk to you for hours and hours, so I really appreciate your presence with us all today and just diving into the deep quantum void with us. Thank you so much for coming on.
And thank you so much for having me.
Oh, you're so welcome. If you guys haven't already hit subscribe, please do. And if you thought of somebody, just like Karen just mentioned, somebody popped up to your mind during this episode, please send this to them. This is the reason why I started my podcast, is because beginning of my whole journey many moons ago, all these shows kind of helped me lead step by step to my own remembrance. And we're continually on every single day. Thank you guys so much for listening. And remember, your body is leading the way. Until next time.